history?
It was 6 centuries ago. Oftentimes people talk about California as if we don't have any history. It was 6 centuries ago that Sir Francis Drake sailed into the bay that now claims his name here, out at Point Reyes National Seashore. And so, important to recognize that there's been a presence here by Europeans that goes back that far. And when you look out at this bay, there's a tremendous amount of history that's associated. It was Cabrillo who first made his way up this coast some 50 years preceding, more or less, Sir Francis Drake. And then Drake, interesting to note, was on a voyage to find the Northwest Passage that somehow would shorten the distance from the East Coast across and over to Asia. That was never discovered. But he sailed up past San Francisco Bay that sits just to the south of us. Didn't see it because, as we all know, the Golden Gate is a narrow passage into the bay, and on any given day you could pass right by it and not see it. So he sailed into this bay, 1579, and needed to resupply, refit, make some repairs to his ship. And so the first contact was made here with the Coastal Miwok. One of the participants in the Drake voyage was a past chaplain named Francis Fletcher. So Fletcher's left us a primary account that describes the about 1 month that passed while there was interaction between the Coastal Miwoks and the crew of Sir Francis Drake. And it was, by and large, a very amenable relationship between the two. We don't hear of any of the conquistador behavior. The English did, of course, make a claim to this land, Nova Albion, New England, and they stuck around for about a month, resupplied their ship, contact with the natives, and of course they would leave. Now, Drake would continue, not going back after his pillage and plunder tour south of us and raiding the Spanish ports along the way, coming up from South America, but instead now would sail across the Pacific, and he would be the second to circumnavigate the globe. First being, of course, Ferdinand Magellan. So there's some interesting legacies here. Contact with the native people, search for the Northwest Passage, which never really panned out, circumnavigation, claimed by the English, and it's a fascinating place to come and hike around. There is a native village which we're going to visit called Culiloclo. Gives us some idea of what native life would have been like. And so, Point Reyes National Seashore, Drake's Bay. Culiloclo. This is a reconstructed Coastal Miwok village. So behind me is what's called a kocha. And a kocha is a dwelling. So you can see that it's constructed out of bark. In and around the area there are plenty of trees, as you might see here. And this village reconstructed is actually used by descendants of Coastal Miwok. And the National Park Service here carries on a variety of programs to try and convey what Miwok society here would have looked like. There's actually in the region an organization called MAPOM, and the acronym stands for the Miwok Archaeological Preservation of Marin. So there's been a lot of work and research in trying to reconstruct what life would have been like here before the arrival of the Spaniards and then, of course, the United States. So the Spanish came, and of course they began to round up the native peoples and bring them onto the missions, and we know that story. But what I want to talk more about here is looking at the environment and how that would have shaped the way that the coastal Miwoks would have lived. They're living in proximity, of course, to other tribes. Numbers are small. You might hearken back to the Elusive Eden. We have a chapter early on in the text that talks about in great detail native society and gives you some very nice depictions of life in all of its shapes and forms. Think about the cultural attributes of the indigenous peoples and apply that to where we are here. In the direction, you'll see a mound, and this is a temescal. You'll notice in your textbook there's some discussion about a temescal. We're going to walk over there. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So this is the temescal, which is also called the sweat lodge. That probably makes a little bit more sense, and you can think about what that might suggest. So this is where the men would have gathered together. It's still used for that ceremonial purpose by coastal Miwok peoples. They do celebrate festivals here, and this is still very much a key aspect of their lives. So if we were able to open this up, which we're not, what you would see is as you walk in, there would be a circular chamber, and they'd gather around in that chamber, and they would put wood on a fire. Actually, at the top here of the construction, there's on the roof is a vent where, of course, that smoke would come out. But it's about a spiritual ceremony. There'd be a shaman involved, the sweating that would take place, the purification, etc. So this would have been a key aspect to the lives of the coastal Miwoks here.